So last week we talked about how Nvidia flat out canceled and unlaunched the RTX 4080 12GB. This is the statement they put up. I'll just rehash it really quick. We covered this the other day. They basically said it was very confusing to gamers to have two 4080s, etc., etc. 4090 launch was amazing, sold out, lots of people. Okay, this is why this is going to be terrible for gamers. First, we can all agree the 4080 12GB was a terrible GPU to launch at $899. Who knows if it was ever going to even hit that price? There's no Founders Edition, remember. That means that most likely AIB partners could pump it up to 1,000 plus, who knows how much. So the 4080 12GB was not a good GPU, and it's good that it's not coming out at that price. Let me make that clear. So why is this actually terrible for gamers? We already are still in the midst of a sort of GPU shortage. Yes, Nvidia has a lot of RTX 3000, but not really all of the models. Some of the high-end ones definitely sell whenever they put it up. Even the 3090 Ti, surprisingly, seems to even be sold out at Best Buy every time that it comes out in stock. So the 4090 is an awesome GPU by all reviewer standards, but since coming out last week, even though there was okay stock locally at Micro Centers, if you happen to live near one, like my local store said they got around 150 cards, meaning that almost everybody that came day one was able to get one, and I even saw them locally maybe until the next day at MSRP. And then of course the big problem happened. They sold out very fast online, maybe within 10 to 15 minutes, especially the models that people really wanted, like the Asus Strix. So why is this a problem? It's a bad combination. People get their cards locally if you have a Micro Center, great. If you don't have a Micro Center, which I know with many of you in the US even, and of course in Europe and other places, if you don't have that as a reality, your next place that you can get it is going to be online, and online sold really quickly. We haven't really seen it restock very often at all, maybe sporadically here or there. That means that yes, you're still going to get your 4090 online if you want it, but you're going to have to pay the unfortunate friendly neighborhood scalper. The scalpers came out in full force. Who knows that if most of the people in line at even the local Micro Centers, maybe a lot of them were resellers. Some of them, yes, were gamers and enthusiasts, but you have to do the math. The amount of 4090s we saw immediately up for sale at really exorbitant prices on Facebook Marketplace and eBay, literally minutes after these people purchased them from Micro Center, they would have never been able to get it shipped that fast from Newegg, literally popped up the day of launch. You know, a lot of people were reselling, and the GPU is sold out. So what does the 4090 have to do with the 4080 12GB? We can agree the 4080 12GB sucks as a 4080, no doubt about it, especially at $899. Would it be a good GPU, however, at maybe $599 or even $699? Maybe $699. You can make an argument that it's like the original 3080, and the performance would make a lot more sense, and you're not paying $899 to $1,000. But Nvidia will have to change the name of this GPU, maybe like the 4070 or the 4070 Ti. Who knows what their exact plans are? But one thing that we know, this is going to affect the GPU shortage in a major way, and it's not going to be good for gamers. Here is the problem. The 4080 comes out in November, the 16GB model. That one is a good GPU, albeit it's definitely expensive. Judging by how the 4090 sold out so rapidly, you can expect that one to disappear even faster because it's going to be cheaper. They're going to probably make more of it, etc. It's going to be a whole mess. Now, before, we were going to have the 4080 12GB launch alongside it. Who knows at exactly what volume, but from what we know now, the third-party AIBs already had these GPUs in boxes. That means there are real boxes out there that say 4080 12GB. The GPUs themselves probably had that name on them as well. The BIOS, of course, would have that. That means that Nvidia is going to have to pay all of these third-party AIBs like, Asus, MSI, not EVGA, of course, since they got out of it. Maybe this is a good move judging from what happened. They're going to have to pay the boxing costs and be able to recycle those boxes, get rid of them. They're going to have to rebrand this GPU. They can't launch it as a 4080. So what does that mean? Who knows how many thousands of these 4080 12GB were being prepared for launch on November 16th. All of a sudden, they just disappeared. They're going to have to go back into whatever warehouse or whatever facility for them to take them out the box, throw the box away, make a whole new 4070 box or whatever Nvidia decides to call it, and then eventually they're going to launch it. I think they might announce it at CES. That's sort of like the latest information that we heard, and then it's probably going to be launched as a different GPU sometime next year. So That means that we're going to have only the 4080 16GB alongside the 4090 as the next generation GPUs. That means that the GPU shortage is continuing and the scalper market is getting hotter than ever. Maybe even the RTX 3000 GPUs may start to kind of go back up in price again, because now you just took the only under $1,000 option from buyers pretty much out of the 4000 series, which is the newest generation. People usually want the newest stuff. Now the only thing you have under $1,000 will be the RTX 3000. Before, maybe you would have to make a tougher decision between a 4080 16GB, maybe think about the 12GB if you found it for the MSRP of $899. Some people I could see maybe buying it over a last generation 3090 Ti or a 3080 Ti, just because it's going to be a newer 4000. Even if the 4080 12GB was never a good value, it would probably sell a decent amount of units just because it's new and the cheapest of the new. Now, you take that completely away and you have a pretty expensive RTX 4000, which is what Nvidia wanted all along. Now, they don't have to worry about another 4080 competing with their RTX 3000, which, by the way, they still have a lot in the market. Many retailers stopped buying these GPUs. Nvidia is no longer selling them because they have so many already in stock and in inventory. That means that now Nvidia is pretty much free to sell you any GPU under $1,200, under the price of the 4080 16GB. Anybody with that budget automatically has to buy an RTX 3000. That might be a 3090 Ti. I've seen them for $999. Might be a 3090, 3080 Ti. Who knows? But those are going to be RTX 3000 GPUs. If your budget is $1,100, you're not getting an RTX 4000 because they start at $1,200. And most likely, the 4090 started at $1,599. Most of them are $1,699 to $1,799. The 4080 16GB, we can assume we're going to see a couple at $1,199. But I would also look for that GPU, $1,399, $1,499. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the 4080 16GB, maybe a beefy model like a Strix, be very close to the cheapest RTX 4090. At that point, you have to ask yourself, should you just buy a cheaper 4090? Because judging from all the 4090 reviews, most of them are within the same range in terms of performance. The only thing that varies here, maybe cooling performance, maybe the design of the cooler itself. But for the most part, let's say you buy a $1,599 base Asus TUF or the $1,799 overclocked TUF, you're going to get a little more performance. Likewise, from the Strix, you're going to get maybe just a little more, very close in terms of frames per second. Here, you're really just paying for like a slight overclock, maybe the design of the GPU, meaning that expensive 4080 16GB may not really be that great of a value. Maybe the cheapest, $1199 ones may be much better, because then you're saving at least $400 compared to the cheapest 4090. But if they start to get high in pricing with the AIB models, that's going to be a little bit tricky. And the same thing would have been true for the 4080 12GB. That would have taken over that space between $1,100 and under $1,200, maybe under $1,000 if you can get them cheap enough. But now those GPUs are gone, and we officially are in a fairly bad shortage, at least of the RTX 4000 of the newer GPUs, because the 4090 since coming out, even though it's been less than a week, we really haven't seen any significant restocking at all. On Friday, I think they had 4 cards at a local micro center that they got in, the MSI Liquid Supreme, but there were already people lined up to snatch those cards before the store opened. And you can bet everybody's checking Best Buy and Newegg, maybe even with bots, to be able to get these newer GPUs before anybody else can get them. So Nvidia canceling the 4080 12GB, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's good because that card was not good for its price. It should have never been a 4080. It should have been a 4070 at best, maybe even a 4060 or 4060 Ti, according to some people's analysis of the specification. But regardless, canceling it means a lot of 4080s have disappeared from that price range, and now all you're going to be left with is going to be RTX 3000. Who knows when they're going to release this GPU out in the wild again? The 4070, we're definitely going to be a ways away still from it. I don't really foresee them having to release it, especially considering that the 4090 is selling like crazy. Remember, before, Nvidia would want to sell you a cheaper GPU because that's what most of the market bought. 1060s, 1070s, maybe up to the 1080. Not that many people bought the Titan GPU, maybe not even something like the 2080 Ti, which was the highest end GPU. Not that many people bought it. Now, it seems, at least from Nvidia's perspective, people are crazy over the highest, most expensive GPU, meaning they likely have the biggest price margins and the biggest revenue if they sell just 4090s more than the other GPUs as well. Last generation for RTX 3000, that's when I saw this happening. I thought the 3090 was going to be kind of like a rare GPU, only a couple of people got, but as we saw the shortage continue to get worse and worse, the 3090 was actually the most prevalent GPU that you could find in the store. That means that any day that you walked in, you're not going to find a 3060 or a 3070. Those sold out really rapidly, or Nvidia didn't make enough of them for the demand. But the 3090, sometimes you actually had a chance at buying one. That makes sense on Nvidia's side because it's the most expensive GPU, giving them the most amount of the overall revenue. So the same thing could be happening here as well. But of course, we have to keep in mind they need to get rid of excess stock of RTX 3000, and eliminating the cheapest RTX 4080 definitely serves that purpose, and I don't really think it's that good for gamers. Maybe unless RDNA 3 comes out with something that's going to sway you in that direction, but at least not from Nvidia. You're not going to get anything under $1,200 of the newest generation, meaning no DLSS 3.0 and things like that. And of course, judging from the performance of the 4090, definitely very appealing for gamers. I mean, it is tremendous performance over even the 3090 Ti. So even though RTX 3000 still performs great, you're going to have to buy a last generation GPU, which is a little bit weaker. But you have to admit, the RTX 4080 12GB disappearing from stock is certainly going to continue the GPU shortage we're seeing come back with the RTX 4000 series.